Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the fourth in our Managing Diabetes in a Modern World series. Today's topic is on fat, sodium, and sugar. Oh my. And I'll have you advance the slide, Kristin. So for those that may not know, University of Illinois Extension is the flagship outreach effort of the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And we offer research-based education to residents of Illinois in all 102 counties and far beyond. I think I just saw MSU pop up in the chat box, so welcome outside of Illinois. And I'll have you advance the slide one more time, Kristin. I'm Caitlin Mellendorf. I'm going to be your moderator today. I am one of our nutrition and wellness educators in the University of Illinois Extension. I cover DeWitt, Macon, and Piatt counties in about the central area of the state. And a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. To preserve bandwidth, we ask that everyone remain muted and not to use your video. We will use the chat box throughout our presentation today, so feel free to type in any answers to Kristin's questions as we get through. And if you have any specific questions that you want to have answered, we will be doing those at the end of the presentation today. Now I'd like to introduce Kristin Bogdonas. She has been with the University of Illinois Extension for 7 years. She received a Bachelor of Science degree in Nutrition and Dietetics from Illinois State University and a Master's of Public Health degree from Southern Illinois University. Kristin's special areas of interest include chronic disease prevention, fermentation, and food rescue. So everyone, please welcome Kristin, and I turn this presentation over to her.
Thank you, Caitlin. I'm very happy to be here with everyone, and thank you everybody for tuning in today despite all the excitement with the election going on. So this might be a nice little break for you in the midst of all of that. So let's go ahead and get started. So fat and sodium play an important role in a balanced diet, but how much is enough? Today, we'll talk about the different types of fat, which ones you should limit, and how to include more of the heart-healthy oils. You'll also walk away with strategies to enhance flavor in your meals while keeping sodium and sugar at a low. The ultimate goal is to improve the healthfulness of our meals without sacrificing flavor. It's also important to recognize food products that are typically high in fat, sodium, and sugar, and how to make healthier substitutions when cooking at home and when dining out. Did you know that each gram of fat you eat contributes 9 calories? That's twice as much as both carbohydrates and proteins, which both contribute 4 calories per gram. For this reason, it's wise to keep an eye on your fat intake, but more importantly, the sources of fat in your eating pattern. The American Diabetes Association, the American Heart Association, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture have made recommendations that Americans aim for a total fat intake of no more than 30% of calories and choose foods low in saturated fat. For example, if you eat 2,000 calories a day, then your limit on fat would be about 66 grams or 600 calories coming from fat. And as a reference, one piece of cheesecake contains 28 grams of fat. So that one piece of dessert is almost putting you at the halfway mark for your total fat intake for the day. A little fat goes a long way. If you count carbohydrates, you are probably familiar with the exchange lists. The term choice in the exchange list is used to describe a certain quantity of food within a group of similar foods. These lists are grouped into 3 main types. We have carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And this chart here shows some of the different choices in the fat exchange list. One fat choice is based on a serving size that has 5 grams of total fat. We know that each gram provides 9 calories, so a food choice with 5 grams of fat would have 45 calories. So here's an example that somebody might like to enjoy at breakfast. So today, maybe we're going to have 3 slices of bacon, which gives us 5 grams of fat for each slice. We have 10 grams of fat coming from the butter on our toast. And we have another 5 grams of fat from the cream in our coffee. So this breakfast would give us 30 grams of fat. So we're about halfway to our 66 grams for the day with just one meal. Now this breakfast might be low in carbs, but it's also very high in fat, especially saturated fats. And this is, remember, something that we want to reduce in our eating pattern. So let's take a closer look at the different types of fat. They can be divided into 3 main groups. Unsaturated primarily comes from vegetable sources and are healthier fats. There are 2 main kinds, mono and polyunsaturated. It's recommended to eat more of these fats in place of the other 2 listed on this slide, since these fats have heart and brain health benefits. Saturated fats primarily come from animal sources and are considered less healthy and are solid at room temperature. The goal is to get less than 10% of one's calories from saturated fat. So for example, if you are eating 2,000 calories a day, you want to aim for 20 grams or less of saturated fat. And then we have trans fat. So some can be naturally found in meats and dairy products, but most of the trans fat are made in a process that changes liquid vegetable oil into a semi-solid fat. And this helps with shelf stability of a lot of our processed foods. It's advised to avoid trans fat because they can raise your risk for heart disease by increasing your LDL cholesterol and lowering your HDL cholesterol. Sources of trans fat include solid vegetable shortening, stick margarine, lots of different snack foods, fried foods, and other items made with partially hydrogenated vegetable oils. So hydrogenation, this is the process that creates a semi-solid fat. So in addition to checking the nutrition facts panel, it's a good idea to also look at the ingredient list on food packages for the type of fat used. Since most trans fats are found in our processed foods, it's a good idea to get into the habit of checking the ingredient list for the words partially hydrogenated vegetable oils. This indicates the presence of trans fat, even if the nutrition label reads 0 grams. So here are 2 examples where the label says 0, but partially hydrogenated oil is found in the ingredient list. Peanut and peanut butter, these are good sources of unsaturated fat. So why are there hydrogenated oils in this product? Well, the purpose is to prevent the oil separation at the top of the jar. But there's always 2 things I look for when I go out to buy peanut butter or another kind of nut butter. I want to see that oil separation. And I also want to see just the nuts listed in the ingredient list, since this is something that I eat on a regular basis. I don't want to get any extra trans fat in my diet. So for this slide, I'm going to bring up some images of different fat sources. And in the chat box, I want you to go ahead and type in which type of fat you think this food source is. Okay, so is it unsaturated, saturated, or is it a trans fat? So our first food item is peanut butter. What type of fat is that? All right, John says unsaturated. Any other guesses? That is correct. It is an unsaturated fat. So any of our nut butters will be unsaturated. Next up, we have butter. This is solid at room temperature. Correct. Judith got it. This is a saturated fat. Yes. All right. What about avocados? Very popular food right now. Yes, this is an unsaturated fat. This is monounsaturated, so it's a heart healthy food choice. I use a lot of avocados in my cooking. Tuna. This is also an unsaturated. So tuna and other fish can be good sources of omega-3 fats, which are good sources of fat for our brains. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Cheese. Cheese and dairy, what do you think? Yes, these are all saturated fats. So something that we want to enjoy in smaller amounts, that's for sure. Olives. Olives and olive oil, these are great everyday cooking oils. These are a monounsaturated fat. So for your heart healthy cooking, try to incorporate more of these. What about coconuts and coconut oil? These are saturated fats, and they have a medium chain triglyceride. So some research indicates they might have some additional health benefits, but since it is saturated, we want to eat these sparingly in our diet. And then our last food here is English walnuts. So again, all of our nuts, seeds, nut butters, and even the oils coming from the nuts and seeds are unsaturated, right? And these are all great, healthy, heart healthy cooking oils that you can utilize. So let's take a look again back at our breakfast from earlier. So since we should really be trying to get less than 20 grams of saturated fat a day, let's try to make some healthy swaps to see if we can do that. So we're going to cut back on the bacon. We're going to swap out the butter on our toast for peanut butter. And we're still going to enjoy that coffee, of course. We can't have a good breakfast without our coffee and cream, so we're going to leave that in there. So with this breakfast makeover, we are now getting just 10 grams of saturated fat. Okay, so we're getting 5 grams from the bacon, 5 from the cream in our coffee, plus we're getting 10 grams of unsaturated fat from our peanut butter. And I'm going to add a piece of fruit for the vitamins and the fiber. So the breakfast on the right, it's going to be low in saturated fat with a good source of unsaturated. And we're going to be getting some good sources of protein and fiber. So this will have some good staying power to keep us full till lunch. So I'm going to leave you with some eating plan tips for the fat groups. So when choosing fats, it's a good idea to replace saturated fat with mono and polyunsaturated choices. For example, we can use liquid oils like olive oil in place of a solid fat like butter when sauteing vegetables. Can you think of any other ways that you could possibly make a swap in your cooking or baking to incorporate more heart-healthy fats? If you can think of something that you have tried or want to try, maybe type that in the chat box to give us all ideas. Something else I like to do is on my sandwiches, instead of putting mayonnaise, I like to use avocado as a spread, since that's a heart healthy fat and you still get that nice creamy mouthfeel from that texture. Another idea is when making popcorn, instead of using butter, you can spray your popcorn with an olive oil like cooking spray. And then I like to sprinkle on my own homemade seasoning, which I'll get to a little bit later. Let you know what's in my secret seasoning. So let's see. Dawn, you can make pie crust with oil. That's a good idea. Using applesauce in your baking instead of butter. Yep, so any kind of fruit puree would be a good fat alternative. Lots of great ideas there. Nuts and seeds are good sources of unsaturated fats and have small amounts of fiber and protein. So these would be a good snack with staying power, something to keep you feeling full longer. Just keep an eye on your serving size, since some servings are smaller than others. For example, it would be 16 pistachios, 6 almonds or cashews, and 4 walnut halves. So not very much, a little goes a long way there. And then again, with the fish, trying to incorporate more seafood into our diet each week for that omega-3, those healthy brain fats. Some good sources of omega-3 in fish would be herring, salmon, tuna, mackerel, sardines, and trout. And some plant-based options for omega-3s would be ground flax seeds, hemp seeds, and again with the English walnuts. Moving into our next section on sodium. So how can we add flavor without increasing the salt content? The USDA says to limit sodium to less than 2,300 milligrams per day. It also says you should have no more than 1,500 milligrams a day if you are African American, have high blood pressure, diabetes, or chronic kidney disease, are 51 and older. However, the American Heart Association urges all people to limit sodium to no more than 1,500 milligrams, no matter your age, health, or race. However, the vast majority of adults eat more sodium than they should, coming in around 3,400 milligrams of sodium a day. But not all foods are high in sodium. When you combine foods with varying levels as part of your daily diet, sodium just can add up really quickly. The first thing to know is that the salt you use at the dinner table is not the biggest sodium contributor in the American diet. In fact, the majority of the sodium Americans consume, more than 70%, is found in processed food and restaurant meals. So in this example, let's see how fast the sodium can add up. We have a bowl of cereal with skim milk, giving us 250 milligrams. We have a cup of soup and a sandwich, giving us 2,200 milligrams. And we have a leftover slice of pizza and salad. So this is putting us well over the 2,300 milligram limit for the day for a total of 3,160. So you see that sandwich and soup combo is really giving us a lot. And just that one meal, it's almost as much sodium as we need for the entire day. So what can we do with this lunch to reduce the sodium a little bit? Well, one idea would be to choose a lower sodium soup instead. Maybe swapping out the bread, which is generally high in sodium, for a wrap or tortilla. You could even change up the meat in the sandwich. So deli meat always has a lot of sodium in it. Yes, thanks, Caitlin. I was about to say swapping out the deli meat for fresh meat like grilled chicken. So those are a few ways that you can drastically cut the sodium in just that lunch alone. And then with that dinner, one slice of pizza, looking at the toppings, if we can add more vegetable toppings, cutting back on those high sodium meats, and even looking at the crust. This is a thicker crust. So opting for the thin crust can help you save some sodium in the long run as well. Yes, that is a lot of pepperoni on there. That's the meat lovers. All right, when shopping for low sodium foods at the grocery store, try to remember these 3 tips. Number 1, fresh fruits and veggies are naturally low in sodium, so it's a good idea to stock up on these as much as you can. They also make great snacks. So instead of reaching for those grain-based snacks that have a lot of sodium, try to go the fresh route with fresh fruits and vegetables and maybe a dip of some sort that you've made. Frozen or canned vegetables can be a good option too. Just look for the low or no salt added products. If you can't find like salt-free beans, for example, you can rinse them under running water to reduce the sodium content by about 30%. Number 2, when buying processed foods, read nutrition labels and choose products with less sodium. Canned soups, boxed meals, and even breads are some of the higher sodium foods found in the grocery store. Start checking the labels and comparing between brands to find the lower sodium options, especially if you eat these foods on a regular basis. Foods with 140 milligrams or less per serving are considered low sodium. So that's kind of the magic number. And then 3, a really easy way for quick comparisons in the grocery store is to use the 5% rule. This is something I use all the time to determine if a food is low or high in a nutrient. So things that I want to see lower, I want to see, total fat, saturated fat, cholesterol, sodium. I want to see those lower towards the 5% range. And then on the right-hand side, it says quick guide. So that 20% or more, that would mean high in. So things I want to see higher would be the vitamins, minerals, and fiber. So this example of macaroni and cheese, of course, the sodium is going to be very high. We all know that. So with one serving, just half of this container is going to give you 470 milligrams. That's 20% of your daily needs right there in 1 cup of macaroni and cheese. And there's easy ways that you can make your own mac and cheese at home. And one of those ingredients I'll get to here shortly. So in dining out, chain restaurants, they usually have their nutritional information online, whether on the menu or some other place on their website. A good idea is to check ahead of time if you know where you're going to find those lower sodium options. Sometimes a restaurant will have like a heart healthy menu, or they might put a heart next to a menu item indicating that it's lower in sodium. So check to see if they have any good options there. Some ways that you can cut back when eating out, you can ask restaurants not to add the seasoning salts to your meal. So for example, years ago, I used to work at Red Lobster, and on just about everything, their vegetables, their fish, they would include the seasoning salt. And I got in the habit of just asking them not to put that on my food. Well, I knew they were doing it because I worked there. So you don't always know, what they're adding to the food when they're preparing it. So just ask your server, is there any seasoning salt added, or can you ask them to leave that off? That's one easy thing you can do. Another thing is to ask for sauces and condiments to be on the side so you can add it yourself. You can always share an entree. So lots of different things you can do to cut back on sodium when dining out. The next time you find yourself eating out or carrying out, watch out for foods that are described on the menu with these words here on the slide, which indicates that they are high in sodium. And another source of sodium at the dinner table would be the bread basket. So that's a lot of carbs and a lot of sodium. So if you can get by with just one basket instead of multiple refills, you will save yourself a lot of carbs and sodium in the end. Can you think of any restaurants or chains that have a lot of high sodium options on their menu? If you can think of some, please put it in the chat box. I have a few on my list that I know are generally going to be higher. Yes, Chinese, Mexican food is usually high. And then think of restaurants that have a lot of bread. So delis like Panera, if you look at their menu online, are very high in sodium. And even Italian restaurants too can be very high. So just be on the lookout. Olive Garden, yes. I was just thinking that. So let's look at some ways that we can flavor our food without adding a lot of salt. Aromatics, herbs, and spices add flavor without adding sodium. Aromatics are fragrant ingredients that are the foundation of so many recipes. When you cook them, they release a wonderful fragrance that is sure to elicit your appetite. This time of year, I make a lot of soups and like savory vegetable bowls. So I tend to stock up on these types of food ingredients because I know I'll be using them frequently. One of my favorite smells is probably the combination of onions, garlic, and olive oil all simmering together on the stove, which forms the base of a lot of my weeknight meals. Something you can do is try to make your own marinade. All you have to do is, if you have a food processor, you can throw in some citrus fruit, ginger root, onion, garlic, and olive oil. And if you have some herbs like cilantro or parsley, or you can throw those in as well. And then you can coat your chicken or fish and vegetables with this mixture. Let it sit for a couple hours in the refrigerator before baking or broiling, and it will be a nice treat for your taste buds. You have a little sweet, you have a little sour, you have a little savory. It's really good. If you prepare a lot of meals at home, I would encourage you to invest in some good quality herbs and spices that would pair well with the foods that you typically enjoy. So this slide shows some classic combinations and things I like to make, but it's really about what you personally like. So in the chat box, you can let me know what herbs and spices you generally cook with and how you like to use them. So I'll go through the slide here. We have basil with tomato and mozzarella, one of my favorite summertime snacks. I make that all the time. Dill and lemon with grilled fish. We have roasted vegetables with rosemary and garlic. I have a lot of rosemary from my garden this summer. Did really well. And it dries nicely. Smoked paprika on just about everything. So smoked paprika, I don't know if you've all had this, but I started using this earlier this year, and it just has a really nice kind of smoky flavor. So anything you add it to, it'll lend well. I put it on eggs. I put it on popcorn sometimes, in my chili, soups, roasted potatoes, just about everything it tastes great on. And then I have my popcorn, which is a great snack that you can flavor with just about anything. So again, I'll spray on some like olive oil, cooking oil, and then I'll sprinkle on this nutritional yeast. I don't know if anyone's had it, but if you haven't, I highly recommend giving it a try. This has a great cheese flavor. And I have the container sitting in front of me here. I'm looking at the nutrition label. There's only 10 milligrams of sodium per serving, which is a tablespoon. So this is a great alternative to like Parmesan cheese. So if you like to enjoy pasta or anything with Parmesan cheese, you can use nutritional yeast in its place for a low sodium option. You can also make your own mac and cheese with nutritional yeast. When you mix it with milk and other liquid ingredients, it turns really creamy. It's delicious. And then I'll sprinkle on some garlic and sumac onto the popcorn as well. So if you haven't had sumac, it looks like paprika, it's red. Mediterranean restaurants use a lot of sumac on their dishes. It kind of has a tart flavor to it. It has a nice flavor, so I use that all the time. So Cynthia, yes, you like to use the smoked paprika and sumac. We probably have similar tastes. And the Bragg's no salt seasoning. Yeah, they have a lot of good seasonings and different dressings as well. I like Bragg's. All right. Another easy thing you can do is to create your own seasoning blends or buy some pre-made seasoning mixes at the store. Just check the label to make sure there isn't additional salt added. So these are a couple of my go-to seasoning blends. Everything bagel. I love everything bagels. Sometimes I just want the flavor and not the actual bagel itself. So you can make your own. This is one of the recipes that I'm going to include in the handouts that I can send after the presentation today. So it's just black and white sesame seeds, poppy seeds, minced onion, and garlic. And I use it most often on hummus, vegetables, and salads, but you could pretty much put it on anything for a little extra crunch. And then the savory Southwest. So again, I like a lot of smoky and savory flavors. So this is something I use frequently for soups and chilies, just about anything that you might want to eat this time of year. So I'm going to leave you with a few eating plan tips for this section on sodium. Whether you're comparing labels at the grocery store or finding flavorful ways to cook at home, there are many things you can do to cut back on sodium in your diet. My favorite would be to use herbs, spices, and the different aromatics. And for our last section on sugar and some sweet alternatives. So many people consume more sugar than they realize. So it's important to be aware of how much sugar you consume because our bodies don't need sugar to function properly. Added sugars contribute 0 nutrients, but many added calories that can lead to extra pounds. The major sources of added sugars in our diets comes from, you guessed it, sugar-sweetened beverages. In the 2015 and 2020 dietary guidelines for Americans, the recommended limit of calories from added sugars is no more than 10% each day. So again, if you are on a 2,000 calorie a day diet, that would be 200 calories or 50 grams of sugar. So this equals about 12 teaspoons, a little more than 12 teaspoons. So how do we figure that out? So if you want to know how many teaspoons of sugar are in your favorite beverage, all you have to do is look at the grams of sugar per serving. And then you take those grams divided by 4, since there are 4 grams per teaspoon. So that example there with the 50 grams would give us about 12 teaspoons. Another example would be, let's say someone is going to drink a 20-ounce bottle of Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew is probably one of the highest in terms of sugar content. It has 77 grams of sugar, which is outstanding. So that would be like the equivalent of like 8 sugar cookies in 1 bottle of soda. And it's easier to consume calories in liquid form because you don't have to chew and eat anything. So it goes down a lot easier. The American Heart Association in this image here recommends even fewer calories coming from added sugars. They recommend that men consume no more than 9 teaspoons a day and women no more than 6 teaspoons a day. However, the reality is that most Americans, the average, let's see if I can pull it up, are consuming about 23 teaspoons a day, which is quite a bit, twice as much as what we should be consuming, right? So how many teaspoons is that? That's 92 grams of sugar. So that's about 4 donuts there and 23 teaspoons. Sugars in your diet can be naturally occurring, like that found in fruit, milk, yogurt, or added during processing and cooking. And like sodium, most of the added sugars comes from processed foods and beverages. So it's a good idea to check those labels. There are 4 calories in 1 gram. So if a product has 10 grams of sugar per serving, like this example here, that's 40 calories just from the sugar alone, not counting the other ingredients. So how do you know how much sugar is natural versus added? Well, previously on the nutrition facts label, there was not a way to differentiate between naturally occurring and added sugars. However, with these new label laws, manufacturers are required to list added sugars on the label underneath total sugar, so where that arrow is. To determine the amount of carbs you consume, focus on the number of total carbs. Naturally occurring sugar and added sugar are already counted in the number of total carbohydrates, along with other carbohydrates such as starches and fibers. So a good example here is thinking about yogurt. So we know yogurt and other dairy has naturally occurring sugar. And a lot of the flavored yogurts have a lot of added sugar, sometimes as much as a candy bar. So just keep an eye on your yogurt, if that is something you like to enjoy, to make sure you're not getting a lot of added sugars there. Some brands are marketed as having low sugar varieties, so I would encourage you to buy those if at all possible. So nutritive and non-nutritive sweeteners can enhance the flavor and possibly the texture of your food. Nutritive sweeteners are sugar replacers that supply calories in the form of carbohydrates and include sugar and sugar alcohols. In addition to table sugar, some examples include fruit juice, honey, maple syrup, and agave. These natural sweeteners are often sweeter than table sugar, so less is required. Sugar alcohols like mannitol and xylitol are generally added to processed foods and come from plants such as fruits and berries. They provide fewer calories than table sugar as the body doesn't absorb them as well, which causes their glycemic response to be low. You will see these a lot in sugar-free gums and candies and food products that are marketed as like diabetic foods. However, they still count towards the total carbs in the food item, plus excess consumption may have a laxative effect. So if you are sensitive to sugar alcohols, just make sure you aren't over-consuming on the serving size. And then we have our non-nutritive sweeteners, also known as artificial sweeteners. So by themselves, they will not affect your blood sugar levels. They are considered free foods, which means they have less than 20 calories and 5 grams or less of carbohydrates. However, foods that contain artificial sweeteners have other ingredients that can still affect your blood sugar levels. Also, we don't know for sure if using these sweeteners in foods and drinks will make people actually eat or drink fewer calories every day, but we do know that reducing the amount of added sugar in our diets is a good thing. And then there's one at the bottom that's bolded, allulose. This is a new low-calorie sweetener. And I wasn't too familiar with this one, so I did look it up. On their website, it says that it has the same great taste and texture as sugar. It is found naturally in small quantities in foods like wheat, jackfruit, figs, and raisins. According to Susan Main at FDA's Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, allulose is different from other sugars in that it is not metabolized by the human body in the same way as table sugar. It has fewer calories, produces only negligible increases in blood glucose or insulin levels, and does not promote dental decay. An interesting note, if a food product contains allulose, it will be counted as a carbohydrate, but will not count toward total or added sugars since it only contributes about 1/10 the amount of calories as regular sugar. So I think for this reason, we'll probably start seeing allulose in a lot of our food products here in the near future. Artificial sweeteners can be used to sweeten food and drinks for less calories and carbohydrates when they replace sugar. The sweetening power of most of these is at least 100 times more intense than regular sugar, so only a small amount is needed. However, with allulose, it's only 70% as sweet as sugar, as you can see in the table here. These sweeteners require special instructions when baking since they don't perform the same way as sugar would. So it's probably a good idea to follow recipes specific to the sweetener that you are wanting to use. Usually the recipe might recommend leaving a little sugar in for texture and browning purposes. And again, allulose performs differently. It will brown like sugar, but it browns faster. So you just have to keep an eye on your baked goods if you're using that. And their website also says that it's better for desserts with a smooth texture as opposed to crunchy. So for example, if you use them in cookies, it'll produce more of a cake-like consistency. So in the chat box, let me know if you prefer one of these sweeteners over the others and how you like to use it in your cooking or baking, or maybe you use it for beverages. Some good sources for more information on these sweeteners is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Their website is eatright.org, and also the American Diabetes Association at diabetes.org. And I will put these resources in your handout as well as this table. And pretty much everything from this presentation today will be in the handout, which I can send at the end of the presentation. So I see a lot of stevia in the chat box here. That's interesting to know. I have not tried using stevia in any baked goods, but I might try that this year and do like stevia in my coffee too. And they have a liquid stevia, flavored stevia drops that you can add. Those look pretty good. A little pricey. All right, so that pesky sweet tooth is at it again. So when sweet cravings strike, try to have some healthier options on hand so you aren't tempted to eat all that leftover Halloween candy I know is lying around. So instead of cookies, you could try chocolate chip cookie dough hummus with apples. I know that sounds a little odd, but it is very good. And I finally got the recipe down to taste just like cookie dough. I'm going to add this. This recipe is in the handout that you'll get to. It's one of my favorites. Instead of that fruit pie, maybe think about making a fresh fruit parfait or arrange fresh fruit on a plate with some interesting yogurt dips. One of my favorite is a key lime pie Greek yogurt dip, which I'll put in your handout. Tastes really good with cut up fruit and graham crackers if you like. Instead of that ice cream, try making your own homemade nice cream, which is basically frozen bananas that you puree, and the consistency is very similar to ice cream. It's really smooth. You can eat it as is, or you can add other ingredients like chocolate or fresh berries, some coconut shavings, whatever you like. The holidays are coming up and there will likely be many decadent desserts calling your name. Instead of eating that entire piece of pie or cake, try the 3-bite rule. So the first bite is to taste it. The second bite is to savor it. And the third bite is to be satisfied with it. So I use this all the time, especially around the holidays, because there's so many different desserts. I just want to have a little bit of each without overdoing it. So by following this rule, you can still enjoy your favorite dessert while staying within your added sugar limits for the day. Here's a few eating plan tips I want to leave you with for the sugar section. Try to switch to unsweetened beverages whenever possible. Some good options would be unsweetened coffee and tea, or making your own infused waters. I like to use herbs with my fresh fruits. Lemons and limes are always good. If you want to get festive, you can do some cinnamon sticks and apple slices for fall flavors. Make sure you check the labels to reduce added sugars in your food. Now that there's a line for added sugar on the label, that's to your benefit. Try maybe some non-nutritive sweeteners to help cut calories in your beverages or baked goods. And of course, enjoy your sweet treats, but just a little less. And just a few takeaways. So we covered a lot of information today about ways to cut back on fat, sodium, and added sugars in your diet without sacrificing flavor. And as we discussed, there are many ways you can achieve this. So the specifics on how you do it is really up to you. But the ultimate goal is to improve the healthfulness of our meals without sacrificing flavor. So I hope you heard something that you might want to try or learn something new that you haven't tried already. But with that, I want to get to any questions that may have come up in the chat box while we were going through the presentation and before Caitlin wraps up.
Sure. So we had one question. So this person says that their doctor would like them to gain some weight and asked for recommendations on how to do that in a healthful way.
So I have heard people trying, smoothies, there's shakes that are higher calorie, but still have a good nutritional makeup. So you can ask your doctor if he or she has any suggestions on those calorie boosting shakes that are available on the market. Another thing you can do, I like to make a lot of smoothies in the morning, and that's a great way to combine a lot of different ingredients like nut butters, even seeds, things that have a higher fat content. You could try incorporating those with fruits, maybe throw in a little spinach, if you like milk or dairy alternatives. So that would be a good way to get some higher calorie breakfast into your day. Yes, avocados. You can even probably buy some powders. They have different protein powders that you could add in. If your doctor doesn't have any suggestions, you could talk to a registered dietitian. Some grocery stores have them on staff, so that would be a great place to start.
Great, thank you. We had a question about when you were talking in the sodium section, talking about vegetable pizza crust. So that would be like cauliflower crust. I did go ahead and look.
Okay.
There was one brand that had 500 milligrams of sodium for the entire crust.
Okay.
So I was like, you could make your own, but I thought I would go look up a brand. But anything else you want to add about vegetable crusts?
I have not used a lot of vegetable crust. I have attempted to make a cauliflower crust once. So, I mean, if it's, just the vegetables, it's going to be, very low in sodium. Just make sure if you're buying something that's pre-made, because we know a lot of our processed foods, increase the sodium, just check that label just to make sure that the serving size, you're seeing a lower sodium content.
Perfect. And then this wasn't a question from our participants, but it's one that I get a lot in classes. It seems like when you go to shop, you often have the choice of lower in fat or lower in sodium and not both. Any tips on what to shop for?
Yeah, it seems like when they take something out, they have to add something back in to make it palatable. So anytime you can make your own version of something. So again, with our pre-made boxed meals, our frozen dinners, a lot of these things are convenient and easy to make. You can just pop it in the oven or the microwave. But again, you're going to be possibly getting a lot of fat or a lot of sodium or a lot of sugar. So anytime you can make something yourself, make it from scratch, you're going to be saving yourself a lot of calories and additional sodium content in the end.
Yeah, I know. I think about this when I buy crackers, because you can buy low-fat crackers, you can buy low-sodium crackers. And for me, at least, when I compare labels, I feel like the sodium decreases a lot more in crackers than the fat. So I tend to go for low-sodium crackers and not worry so much about if my crackers are lower in fat. But there are different things of different brands and different methods of that. Let's see, Judith mentioned if you are making a bigger batch, buy a can of low sodium, combine it with a can of low fat. Yeah.
So there you go.
That would be a good way to kind of stretch it. Sure.
Best of both worlds. There you go.
There you go. Yeah, I like it. Any other questions or thoughts for Kristin? Those were all the questions that were in the chat box, but let's give everyone a few minutes to think about other questions. And then Kristin, do you want to jump to the next slides? And so while people are thinking of questions, we'll continue finishing out our session.
Absolutely.
So just as a reminder, we have one more lesson in our webinar series that will be next Wednesday, November the 11th. And this will be the last one in our series. So we hope that you join us for that final one. And this will be on managing your risk. And so this will cover topics around the additional risk factors for diabetes. So for example, heart health is a concern when you have diabetes. Looking at your eye health, you're looking at your kidney health. So we'll have a variety of discussions on that. And, oh yeah, Lois, it is Veterans Day. So hopefully this won't interfere with any events that are going on in your area and you'll still be able to join us. But of course, we do record all of these sessions. So if you are unable to attend in person, we'll be posting the recordings later on so you can come back to those. And then I think, is there one more slide, Kristin?
No, just my sources.
Okay. So as we finish out, so again, if you still have other questions that you think of, let us know. Well, we're still got some time towards the end here. So after this session is over, we will send you a survey because we would love to have your feedback about this lesson and what you've learned and any steps that you plan to take from it. And as a reminder, within the survey, there is a section for you to enter your email address, and that will allow you to receive the print materials and program materials that Kristin mentioned, like the handouts. We give about 7 business days to receive those print and program materials. So please remember that it may take us a full week for that. And we ask that you complete the survey within 3 business days. So I guess that would be today, tomorrow, Friday, and then I guess Monday if you want to count another business day. Just so that we give you some time to fill that out, but then also give us time to send those print materials to you. So please look for that in your email to come. And Kristin, we do have a couple other questions that popped up in the chat box. Marilyn asked, what about Coke Zero, which is, no calories, and any thoughts or preferences?
Well, it's sugar-free. So if that is something you're going for, then that would be a good option. Again, with the sodas, I always recommend people, to reduce sodas in general in their eating patterns and try to switch to other beverages if possible.
And I think it's a lot of what you mentioned earlier. So for the sweet things, the things that are less healthy, we still want people to be able to enjoy them, but it is very much looking at less overall. And then we had another question. Is there a place to share recipes? So Tammy's saying that her husband has congestive heart failure, and it's hard to find recipes since they can't do salt or sugar.
I don't know about sharing recipes among others. In the handout I'm going to be sending out about a week from now, I do have additional sources listed with websites where you can go for some healthier recipes. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you are looking for, but I would always recommend, speaking with a registered dietitian, someone who knows your health history, and they could do a lot with you regarding specific elements of your eating plan. And I'm not sure what grocery stores you have in your area, but some will have a registered dietitian on staff that can do, grocery store tours and can help with your meal planning. So that would be a great place to start if you have that available. Another good place you could check is if you're on Facebook, there's a lot of special interest groups that you can join. So there might be one specific to recipes for people with congestive heart failure. And there is a lot of sharing and support on these social media networks. So that could be another place where you could look into.
And then Dawn also shared Produce for Better Health has a website. I think they have a new brand. I don't think they're Produce for Better Health anymore, if I remember right. And then Meatless Monday, she shared those as websites. Let's see. Yeah, it's hard, Tammy, when you're in rural areas and you don't have as many resources as some of the commercial chains when it's just mom and pop stores. Yeah, Judith, that's a good point. Is anytime you can do a whole food, so plain protein, plain vegetables, plain fruit, that really helps to get the less sodium, less sugar, less fat. Yeah. Yeah, and Tammy, I agree. It is challenging. So we, and then Kristin, you said, yeah, social media is a great one. The American Diabetes Association has a whole recipe website, as does the American Heart Association, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
so those would be good recipe sites to check out. All right, we've got just a few more minutes here. If anyone has further, see, of course, I start talking and then questions pop in. Yeah, so local foods. So if you have farmers in your area, so we're kind of at the point in the season where there aren't really a lot of farmers markets or events, but yeah, if you have farmers markets or even local distributors in your area.
All great ideas.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, taking a break from all the election craziness. So I'll let you get back to your days and I hope you have a great week. Again, if you have any questions or anything, in the meantime, please shoot us an email and I look forward to seeing your surveys and get those handouts and recipes out to you. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.